Good evening, forex traders. How was your weekend? Hope your weekend went well. Hope you're able to backtest your strategy that you use for trading. Welcome to another analysis on index of the forex space. Don't forget that every week I drop analysis for the index of the forex space. Now let's get started. Now the first pair we're going to be starting with is the dollar index, which is the DXY. Um, Let us start with the weekly time frame. Now, what can we see from the weekly time frame? From the weekly time frame, we can see that price has been able to successfully tap into a supply zone. Previously, we saw some reaction, and now we are seeing that price is coming back to test that region. Now, on the daily, what can we see? Now, we see that price went up, came down, and you will notice that price has broken to the downside from this particular region. Notice that price flow to the downside. So what do we expect now? We are expecting that dollar is coming to test this supply zone, this daily supply zone, and from there we are likely to see a reaction to the downside, maybe to this particular place. Please note that this analysis that I did on the weekly and daily is a long time frame analysis. Now let's check the 4 hour. Now what can we see on the 4 hour? Now if we look at the 4 hour carefully, we can see that we are getting very close to, we're already in the zone and we are seeing some reaction. You can see that price is already making some rejection at this particular point. So that is a sign for us that we are likely to go to the downside. Now if we look at the 1 hour time frame, what can we see? Now after a strong move like this and breaking structure, also we can see that equal highs have been tapped into. We expect price to flow a little bit to the downside. Expect price to flow a little bit to the downside before we see another upward movement, before they continue to the upward movement. So now these are likely to happen on this index, which is the DXY. So that's what we have for DXY. So likely this week we may be able to see that price will come or flow to the downside a little bit before a continuing movement to the upside. Now let's move to the next pair. The next pair we'll move into is the Mexican pixel. Let's see what the daily is saying so far. Now if you look at the Mexican pixel, what can we see? I see that we are reacting towards the supply zone here, the daily supply zone. But don't let us forget what the weekly time frame is doing. Now, I see that we have a major supply zone around this area, which we are expecting. So after a push like this, we may see price coming to this downside. Now, we've seen the daily. Let's see what the 4 hour is saying to us. Now, since price is already at a point like this, we may see a forward reaction to the upside, or we may see price coming to the downside to grab liquidity before moving to the upside. Now, these are all possible movements, but let's quickly check the 1 hour time frame. Now, since price already broke to the downside, I expect that price should at least be able to flow to this side before any other thing. This is possible, or it is possible that we see that price will flow to this downside and we have something like this. Any of the two is very much possible in the market. Now let us move to the New Zealand dollar. For the New Zealand dollar, we can see that we are at a very important zone here, which is on the weekly time frame. So, and if you look at it carefully, you see that we're already seeing some signs of rejection. We're seeing some signs of rejection already. Now, if we go to the daily, what can we see? Now, on the daily, we can see that we just broke the previous high I will also tap into a daily supply zone. Now, to see LD price action, we need something like this: impulse, correction, impulse, correction, impulse. That's if we are on the um, bullish market, and vice versa if we are on the bearish market. That is impulse, correction, impulse, correction, and impulse for the bearish market. Now that we've seen impulse to the upside, we may see that price may tap into this particular zone before falling to the downside. Now, if we go to the 4-hour time frame, what can we see? Now, price just made this impulse to the downside, upside, and it's consolidating. So, what do we expect in such a thing like this? I expect a movement to the upside and this. Now, if we go to the 1-hour time frame, what can we see? Now, from the 1-hour time frame, we came down, went up, we came down here, went back up, we came down, broke the previous high, came down. Now, there's every possibility that price can also come down before another upward move, according to what we are seeing on the 1-hour time frame. Now, any of the two is very much possible. You just need to watch to see how the price will react. Now, let us move to the next one. Now, the next one we have here should be the what's it called? The franc, the Switzerland franc. Now, what can we see? On the daily, we'll notice that, okay, let's quickly check the weekly. Let's not rely just on the daily. Now, on the weekly, the major supply zone is at this place. Now, this is just a daily supply zone, and we'll see that we are already bearish in this pair, so we may still expect some movement to the upside before moving down, or we could possibly see some reaction at this point and we flow to the downside. Now, on the daily, we're already getting close to a very important supply zone for the daily time frame. So, what do we expect? Price to move up and drop. Now, on the 4-hour time frame, what can we see? Now we can see that price has just been moving to the upside. So what do we expect? A movement to the upside, then we break to the downside, and a retracement before we continue moving to the downside. Now, if we check the 1-hour time frame, what can we see? On the 1-hour time frame, we have a good demand zone here, which we expect price to go to the upside. But if price will not go to the upside, it is possible that we'll see something like this. Price could just get to this place, fall to the downside. Then we can confirm that it's like the pairs are likely to go down. Okay, the next one we have here is the Canadian dollar. Let's check what we have for the weekly time frame. Now, on the weekly time frame for the Canadian dollar, we can see that this is an important level right here. And if we move to the daily, we can see that from the daily time frame, we've just tapped into the supply zone, and price has just been consolidating around this area for days right now. And please note that this is a place that we've not gotten to in a while. It's been long that we got there. The last time we got there was what's it called? Was July 21st, July 6th, 2021. So we're here again at November. So what can we possibly say? Since price already pushed to the upside, breaking previous structure, we expect that price should flow to the downside a little bit, at least to this point, before we see a continuing movement to the upside, because this is an important demand zone right here on the daily time frame. Now, on the 4-hour time frame, what can we see? On the 4-hour time frame, we can see that price has tapped into this particular block. And what do we expect from here? Now, from this kind of block, we expect that price should react to the upside. Now, but the reaction may just be a little one before breaking to the downside to tap into this important 4-hour demand zone that we have been eyeing for days. Now, let us see what the 1 hour time frame is talking about. Now, on the 1 hour time frame, we can see that price broke to the upside, breaking previous highs, then flowed back. Now, price has failed to create any other upward movement, so we are still within this bound range. And as a result of that, we may see that price will come to downwards before moving to the upside, or price could possibly flow from this particular direction to this place, and we see an upward move before we come down, because let's not forget that we're expecting that daily will retrace. Now let's check the next pair. Now the next pair we'll check is the Australian dollar. We'll check the Australian dollar. Now let's go to the weekly. Now what can we see on the weekly time frame for the Australian dollar? You can see that we've tapped into a daily demand zone, but our weekly demand zone is around this region. And on the daily, what can we see? Now, previously, I posted analysis when we broke this particular place, and I said that this was our next demand zone, that we should be expecting price to tap into this place and move to the upside. Now, we've broken this particular high, so what will we be expecting? Well, next thing we should be expecting is that price should flow to the downside a little bit before breaking previous high. Don't forget that we were trying to come to tap into our weekly demand zone. Now, on the 4-hour time frame, what do we have? Now, on the 4-hour time frame, you can see that we've wicked up into this particular region. So, after a movement like this, we may see price coming to the downside to grab liquidity, move back to the upside, then fall. It is very much possible. Now, let's see what the 1-hour time frame is saying. Now, according to the 1-hour time frame, we still have liquidity sitting down. So possibly we could grab the first liquidity of the upside before flowing to the downside. So we may expect something like this. Very much possible. Now let's move to the next pair. Now the next pair is JPY. About the JPY, we'll notice that price has seriously been dropping to the downside. Now, on the daily, what can we see? Now, we can see that price is consolidating around this weekly demand zone. And will this hold? Well, we cannot say, because if you look carefully, you can see a zone at this lower region. So it's possible that price will still move up a little bit and flow back to the downside. Now, on the 4-hour time frame, what can we see? Now, on the 4-hour time frame, we can see that price has been making LD movement. We came down, went up, came down, broke structure, went up, and we wicked this. So, in this kind of situation, creating liquidity to the upside, but not forgetting that we tapped into a supply zone. So we could see price moving towards the downside furthermore, or we can see that price will react from this demand zone, and if that will be possible, then we can be able to break this moving to the upside. Now if we go to the 1-hour time frame, what can we see? Now the 1-hour time frame, we notice that this was a movement that created the upward movement. Now, if price will react positively to this block, then that will be a good one. But I doubt if that will happen. I'm expecting a flow to maybe something like this, and from there, still coming down to the downside or somewhere like this before we continue the movement to the upside. That's if we will. But if we will not, then price is possibly it's possible that price will come somewhere down, and we break structure to the downside, thus invalidating this block. So we could possibly see further movement to the downside. Now let's quickly check the next pair. Now the next pair we're going to check is the GBP. Now if we look at the GBP on the weekly time frame, what can we see? Now on the weekly time frame, we broke to the downside here, so we went up, tapped into a weekly supply zone, and from there, checking the daily, what do we have? This same zone applies to the daily. So after tapping into this kind of zone, we can see a melting down to the downside, and possibly we can react somewhere here or here. Any of the two is possible. Now, if we check the 4 hour time frame carefully, I'll prefer this to be our reaction point. So price may still flow to the downside and we're reacting. Now, let's see what the 4 hour is saying. According to the 4 hour also, we may be able to react from this particular place and thus creating a movement to the upside and flowing to the downside. Now, if we, sorry, excuse me. Now, if we go to the 1 hour time frame, what can we see? Now, from this point, we are expecting a reaction to the upside, and from there, we can break to the downside. Now, that's what we have for the GBP. Now, let's check the euro. What do we have for euro so far? Now, on the euro, I remember that last week I was expecting that price will come here. But don't forget that since we're on a weekly time frame, this is going to take some time before that is going to happen. Now, price is gradually drawing close to this zone, but price just tapped into this 4 hour demand zone. So what do we expect? Now we expect a continuous movement to the upside after this kind of move. Now on the 4 hour time frame, what can we see? Now we can see that we broke structure at this particular point. Then also at this particular point we broke structure, but we tapped into a supply zone, thus creating reaction for price to melt to the downside. And the next place we're expecting is to break this particular zone. Now, if we look at the 1 hour time frame, you see gradually that price is already reacting to go to the upside. That's what we have for the euro. Now, these are all the indexes on the forex pairs for the major currencies. If you enjoyed this analysis, kindly share this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can be able to get notifications each time we post videos like this on our channel. Thank you very much. Have a lovely day till next week.